Thanks, Kelly. Hi, everyone. My name is Dan Barry. I'm the regional manager for the Pacific Northwest for Fetch. For those of you that don't know, Fetch is a completely off-site package solution. We completely remove packages and resident packages from your on-site teams ever having to deal with them. So with Cyber Monday, Black Friday, all the holidays coming up, you can certainly anticipate probably a 40 to 50% increase in packages if you already haven't seen packages increase over the last 6 months during this time we've been spending at home. So really excited to be here today to introduce Jessica Fern. She is the Director of Training and Development. She likes to say extraordinaire for FPI. And today she's going to be talking about endurance leadership. So take it away, Jessica.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm just like overwhelmed to see all you guys and your names, and I could not be more excited to be here virtually today, coming up to live from my home office to talk about endurance leadership. This is such a critical topic, and sometimes we forget how much leadership has changed as we have changed. And I'm really excited to walk you through my journey this year in a very open format. So I'll be sharing some personal stories and some confessions and lessons learned with you and what I've learned about leadership. I really feel like I've been involved in leadership and as it's changed and as it's developed, and it just means so much more, right? Because people mean so much more right now. So like Dan said, and thank you for the introduction, I do have some resources available. My fave is this little guy, this little activity sheet. So you can use it to color on and draw on or doodle or whatever you need to do to stay engaged with me today. So welcome to Endurance Leadership, AKA adrenaline gone, endorphins depleted, my muscles hurt, this isn't fun anymore, and I'm starving leadership. I actually think that I missed in every single leadership book that I've ever read or training that I've taken that says you have to be a leader, manager, team member, parent, friend, teacher, basically all of the things 24/7 and be happy about it. Right? I think I missed that part. I definitely don't include that in my leadership speeches. So wherever that's hiding, please, by all means, let me know. So let's first talk about traditional leadership, right? Leadership that we are used to. You see, when we think about traditional leadership, it usually involves exactly what you see on your screen. A individual who is leading a group of people through a insert cool landscape backdrop here, challenge, right? It appears to be a challenge. And traditional leadership starts at the inception of a challenge, and it usually ends once it's resolved. The best part about traditional leadership, though, like I gotta give it to it, is it either ends when the crisis is over or it's time to go home. Like, love to stay, but I got stuff to do. Traditional leadership is also often confused with getting things done right, which is actually the definition of management, when in fact true leadership is getting the right things done. I think COVID really identified the difference between traditional leadership and what I'm going to call endurance leadership. Some of those that thought that they were good leaders were really efficient managers. They were great at solving technical problems, which means there's an easy solution or fix. Any technical problem you can apply an easy sense of logic to, and you can solve the issue. That's also kind of 9 to 5 leadership, right? Where again, you have the luxury of checking out at the end of the day. But there's another kind of problem out there. There are adaptive problems that you can see. You can't see. You can feel them. And they involve value, they involve loss, they involve change, and they definitely take time, right? These types of problems require a whole new kind of leadership that I'm calling endurance leadership, right? Endurance leaders don't solve these kinds of problems. They don't solve technical problems. They don't even really solve adaptive problems because there is never, ever a quick fix. Instead, they empower others to take charge of their own solutions by creating vision and an environment to test it in. So endurance leadership actually looks a lot like this. right? I think a lot of us can identify with it. And it's not faking it or pretending. It's complete vulnerability and refusal to give up. Endurance leadership is so much about attitude and an active perspective, right? We are participating in our options. We are participating in our choices. We are participating in our attitude. We are not a life happens to me. We are life happens because of me, right? The situation happens because of me. Where I know that seems like, well, I didn't ask for any of this, but there's a lot of freedom there because we get to decide what we do with it. We get to decide how it impacts and influences us. Leadership has nothing to do with problem solving. It's all about motivating people to thrive, right? That's what we want to do. We're not surviving, we are thriving. Endurance leadership is the recognition that people must be separated from problems. We lead people, not problems. This is why old techniques don't and won't work anymore because people have changed, right? We cannot lead in a way that is obsolete or that simply doesn't exist. Leadership is making a leader shift, and friends, it starts with you. So I want to show just a little image here about what leadership was and now what leadership is. So leadership was a clear solution to a problem. And now there's no clear issues, right? Because half the time we don't even know what the issues are. They can be fixed by applying logic or an easy solution. And with now adaptive leadership, they really involve critical thinking and strategy and people, right? It's people building, not necessarily problem solving. So I think one of the biggest pieces of this is self-awareness. I hear all the time, oh, during this environment, a COVID environment. The COVID environment has set the tone for a new environment. The old environment is not coming back because we are not the same. We don't learn the same anymore. We don't interact the same anymore. We know a little bit more about what's important. We know a little bit more about what's not. The old environment is not coming back. So we can't, again, lead in a way that doesn't exist. That's kind of a big thing right now, right? Like everything that I was doing kind of doesn't apply anymore. We have to be self-aware. We have to be able to identify who we are. How have I changed? How have my values shifted? Self-awareness is a really critical piece of this puzzle, and it takes an extreme amount of courage to be self-aware because it identifies that we are responsible, right? It's that shift between this is happening to me, which alleviates responsibility, and when it happens because of me, I assume responsibility. Leadership has to evolve because people evolve. You evolve. If you stay where you've always been, then you will always get what you've always got. This is your invitation to mourn the loss of leadership's past and level up, right? Leadership is for everyone in some capacity or another. Whether you like it or not, you influence people, so you can be a leader. Some leaders come up with plans, some disseminate plans, and others execute. Leadership is not a formal position. In fact, the most influential people in your life, I'm sure, are those who don't have a formal position. And I can even prove it the opposite way, right? I'm sure you know a lot of people in a position of authority who are not good leaders. So leadership is not given, it is earned. But think of an orchestra, right? Especially if you think about where your leadership styles fits in. Not everyone is the conductor. We need the musicians. And then we have composers. These are the ones that hear the music before it's even written. Consider Mozart and Beethoven. How amazing does their music sound now illuminated by an entire orchestra instead of just one individual? It takes an entire team of leaders to execute. Own your part of where you fit in, what's your leadership style, and acknowledge the responsibility. That's empowering to know that you don't need a position or a title to be a leader, to be influential. Sometimes you're both the composer and the conductor. Maybe you are the conductor to one musician, but a musician to another conductor. As many of us are leaders on one team, but are then also a player on another. For example, I lead a team of 8 people, right? I've got 8 people who report directly to me Poor, poor guys, right? But I also report to a whole team. So I'm a leader in one capacity, but a player on another. And while I'm playing, while I'm being a musician, I also get to influence those around me. So my leadership does shift and take place depending on what my particular role is. Either way, leadership takes trust. People trust those who trust themselves. Trust is a feeling that's earned, and it's built from demonstrated integrity, reliability, authenticity, and knowledge. You cannot earn someone's trust, though, without having first earned it within yourself, right? We need to trust ourselves. To trust yourself, you have to know yourself. And leaders aren't perfect, they are authentic. This picture on your slide actually means a lot to me, and you're going to see that throughout this presentation that I've used some personal pictures because one of the things that I have learned is to be self-aware. So this particular picture that you see on your slide represents something that ties Beethoven, Mozart, and myself together because this year was really impactful for me as I acknowledged and accepted a lifelong challenge that I've had with ADHD. And I've really learned how that affects my life and learned to embrace it. And while it's very challenging, I get to be large. And I love this quote that you see on your screen too. COVID changed so much for me because it made the ground that I stood on very uneven. My life, while it was everything I ever wanted, it was just busy enough to keep me distracted from addressing who I was at my core. I think a lot of us went through that fight or flight mentality where you're so busy fixing things, then it all gets taken away from you, and you're like, hey, how's it going? Come here often? Maybe, maybe not. I've always heard the music before it plays. I am a composer at heart. It's actually one of my superpowers that allows me to think big, dream big, and motivate others to do the same. It also created a window for me to see what I need to focus on, which was self-awareness and care. Rebalance my values and accept that as a leader, nothing is better than being different because celebrating me means celebrating you as we meet people where they are at and then lead them to where they could be, which is a very important thing to remember as you come to terms with who you are and you are shifting from what leadership was, which is focusing on the how, to now focusing on the why, right? Leadership traditionally was very role-based. Now it is very theory-based and thought-based, what we could be, right? So I'm going to start getting into some pretty amazing lessons learned. And so I love this because I think that you'll be able to identify with some of them. And this particular slide actually means a lot to me because I remember this day very clearly. It was COVID had hit, and I was a huge player or musician on a bigger team, right? So I was very involved in initiatives and strategy and policy writing, and which was great for me because my brain really thrives there. I felt like I was using everything that I had learned in my last 5 years, just preparing to be in my role as a training director in this moment. And I felt like everything was coming to life. I'm like, man, I just didn't think I was good. I am good. And I just dove into it. The day on your slide that you see here, we were new into the shutdown, new into homeschooling. And I'm like a self-admitted, not a very good stay-at-home mom. Like I need to work. I love that side. I love being a mom, but like I like, taking you to school in the morning and see you at 4:00 type of thing. So it's hard for me to be at home with my kids all day. I'm way too selfish, right? I like my things. I like my time. And that was interrupted. And I'm trying to balance all these initiatives and stress and be a mom and now be a teacher. And gosh, literally half the first 2 weeks, I didn't even know what I was doing. So I remember this particular day, and I've been held up in my home office all day. I don't remember what I was working on, probably a policy or a strategy or something to help us move through COVID, and it's hard because it's nothing anybody had ever done or been through before. So for me, I love coming up with new ideas. I love executing on that. But I'd come out in the afternoon and I found my then 7-year-old asleep on the counter. And she had clearly gotten herself a snack because she was hungry. And she was just exhausted from the new virtual learning. And this was in the afternoon sometime. And then you see on the other side of your screen my 12-year-old son, who I found out, and I was home and I had no idea. It was really funny. I talked to my sister because my friend sent this video to my niece to edit. And my sister called me on that weekend just to kind of check in and see how things were going. And she was like, oh, yeah, I really like the video that Jackson filmed. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, oh, the one from the roof of your house. I was like, from the where? Again, I was home and I was so in player. I ended up at the end of the day too tired to be a really hard thing to admit to, right? But remember that leadership, especially endurance leadership, requires self-awareness. And once I acknowledged it, I was able to then shift. I also learned that all of this was self-inflicted. I had a choice where I wanted to spend my time. And a lot of us experienced that work pressure. And mine was self-inflicted. I work for the most family-orientated, like supportive, we don't care if you have kids, do what you need to do company ever. But my values of achievement, my values of integrity really kind of blurred those lines for me. And then really learning how ADHD played a role in time balancing and time management and how my mind operates in a very now sense, I was able to then create boundaries, ask for what I need, and acknowledge that my stress was self-inflicted. You don't ever have to apologize for having a family, right? Endurance leaders need to learn how to ebb and flow and take risks, even if those risks mean looking within yourself and asking for what you need. I could have easily blamed my job, but again, I work for a very family-oriented company. It was all self-inflicted. All of it was. I added that pressure on myself. We've not traditionally worked in work environments where family was accepted. And it's so funny to think that pre-COVID, I would have like died giving a webinar and having like one of my kids walk in or the dog running down the hallway. And that is just a part of day-to-day life. Like, how amazing is it to embrace the reasons why we show up here in the first place, right? That family piece. That's a really important shift in leadership as well. Leadership was scared. It was unwilling to admit failure. It was self-sufficient and it was comfortable. Leadership is now courageous. It embraces failure as experiences. And it's very uncomfortable because you gotta be uncomfortable to grow. A strong why is an easy how. So I started mountain biking right before COVID hit in February. So this is actually a picture of me on a trail on my bike. I'm a huge mountain bike person. And I will tell you, if you've ever wanted to trust yourself, man, go jump on a mountain bike. Nothing will scare you like riding that bike down a trail you've never been through. But I will tell you, the only 2 times I've ever really seriously fallen, both of those times were times I second guessed myself, where I was like, ooh, can I at the last minute? I really learned to trust my instincts and put work in to keep improving my skills. That's something that I think in a very like short-term leadership and a traditional leadership, like I need a skill, I'm gonna go get it, I'm gonna go find it, I wanna perfect it, I wanna move on. We kind of skip the zone between I am able to and I want to and now I can. There is a period of time that it takes to really learn. And endurance leadership, adaptive problems, things that you can't see but feel, they don't happen overnight. And that's an uncomfortable feeling to settle in because it burns and it hurts and it requires a lot of growth. It's actually funny because the reason that I found my love of cycling in the first place started with the knee injury. I had worked out in a very specific way and I had overdone it and over a specific amount of time, I really ended up messing up my knee. And I really count on exercise to make me a better individual. It is stress management for me. I enjoy doing it. I like listening to my music. So to have that taken was really hard, especially taken in a way where I had learned to do it a specific way. I sometimes get in routines. I really like that. But when I had my knee injury, I had to completely change the way that I worked out, and I wasn't happy about it. Y'all, I used to sit at LA Fitness, like at the top, in the top section where they have all the cardio machines, on the recumbent bike, and just mean mug people with their good knees. Like, I'm sitting on the bike, like, look at you, must be nice with your good knees. And I am sitting up there just bitter. And then I really learned to embrace it. It was a big humility hit for me. And then I found cycling. Cycling led me to mountain biking. And I'm never more myself than when I'm on that bike. My brain thrives there. Everything I'm good at, everything I need lands right there. And it's so funny to think that losing everything, usually in our mind, like if I lost everything, I would be destroyed. Endurance leaders, let it build them, right? Let the things that you thought you had, that you thought were taken from you, build you. Remember earlier when we talked about our responsibility and active participation in our attitude? That's what I'm talking about right here. Fear holds us back from taking risks. Endurance leaders get to know their fears because they know that they're not going anywhere. They only get in the way. And the more you get to know your fears, the easier it is. Remember being a kid, like totally afraid in your bed because you heard a sound and you're like, what was that? And then all of a sudden, everything in your room starts spinning, everything starts making noise, and it takes every ounce of courage for you to climb out of bed, look underneath to know that there's no monsters there. And the sigh of relief afterwards, oh my gosh, that is amazing. Same thing here. Fears are only fears until you get to know them. So go learn all the things. Question everything. Google, be proactive, learn. That is how you get to know fear. And sometimes things that we don't know, or new things, uncomfortable things, they can seem really scary. But the more you get to know them, you will know that these are actually only opportunities to grow as you learn to get out of your own way. So, leadership used to be content. Now it is incredibly uncomfortable. And remember that a lot of this is because we knew a lot about a pre-pandemic environment. We had things that were tested. If I do this, I will get this. This is a comfort zone. It's a proven tactic. Now, because everything's up in the air, we don't have that type of comfortability. We have to get to know it, and we have to embrace fear. This is a very testing environment, and it's going to lead to a lot of growth. But that doesn't mean that growth is easy. Growth actually really sucks. It kind of hurts. And it really takes a good mindset to embrace it. Any endurance leader will tell you that it isn't mile 1 that hurts. It isn't getting started that hurts, right? We have all that motivation. It's actually mile 15. You can train for miles, but you can't train for the mental endurance that kicks in when the environment changes or the weather changes, but you still have to keep going. There are things that you can try to train for, but you can't actually experience because it hasn't existed. So everything you've done prepares you, and then you rely on instinct and trust and self-determination to actually make it through. That is endurance leadership. What you don't see on this particular slide, who is my daughter, is the girl who fell off the beam 5 times this day. And she is my kid, right? Like, we don't like to not do well at things. We don't like to have to try more than one time. It's a pride hit. And she got back on every single time. Each fall taught her something new, from what not to do to pushing aside the pride that it took to lift herself back on that beam while everybody else was still up. And that's growth. When your why fuels your how, it doesn't matter how many times you fall. And in fact, you should do yourself a solid and just start building that in. Like, I'm going to fall. I'm going to try this, and I'm probably not going to get it right, but I'll apologize for it, and I will just keep going. What you do see in this picture is a new gymnast who learned and grew this day. She didn't get a promotion or an award. She didn't even get to advance this day, but she did prove to herself what perseverance looks like. And more importantly, that you can grow even when there might not be anywhere to go. So leadership was driven by others, right? And it was learning by leading. And I love this shift. It was driven by or now is driven by our own approval, but it is now leading by learning. And I love that. Just getting to know who we are and who people are and finding out what works now. So this is another probably like biggest hit in the face, right? Because even leaders fall. And on the screen, you see my team. This is my big team. So those who report directly to me, some team members who were on the team and now are not, and then my supervisory team. So I was really distracted by being a player or a musician, as I'm using in this particular presentation, that I kind of rode on the coattails of established trust with my team. I assumed that I could go do all of these other things and participate in, committees and strategy and innovation and all of this because I had gotten my team to a place where they were pretty self-sufficient. And as I got more, what I realized was distracted, or I said busy, I realized that just because people aren't saying anything or they stopped coming to me doesn't mean that they don't have anything to say or that they don't need me. They just stopped saying it to me, right? They just stopped coming to me for it because I was busy in their eyes. I don't want to bother you. I don't want to take time away, when really they are the most important things. So remember those values that we talked about trust was built on, right? Reliability, knowledge, integrity, trust. I kind of changed the reliability part. Endurance leadership doesn't take time off. And this is really hard to balance, right? Where do you shift? Where do you shift your time? My team, though, they really stepped up. And it showed me that I had done a really good job of building autonomous employees who were able to all be leaders and own their position, even when they didn't have like strong leadership every single day. I had done a good enough job of empowering them to go learn, like go do it. I've never been an individual who says, here's the task, you need to do it this way, because that takes away all the learning moments, right? I know how I figured it out and what works for me, but I don't lead in a way that I learn. I lead in a way other people learn. And so I always structure my leadership and I always structure my tasks based on how that individual learns. And they've taught me a lot. And they really showed me a lot here because they stepped up and were able to deliver, even though I had my head turned the other way, buried in a ton of other projects. Looking back, though, I honestly could have prevented a lot of issues just by asking and checking in more, saying, hey, what do you need from me? Or how can I support you best? Is that, sometimes it's just a simple question. We don't want to assume, oh, they don't need me. Oh, they're good. Because I would love to know how many times you've ever assumed and you've been right. Most of the time, assumptions just totally get us in trouble. We are on the wrong track. It never turns out. And a lot of our assumptions end up being decisions we make based on feeling, right? So I feel my team doesn't need me because they're not reaching out. So I'm going to assume that they are okay. What really happened was they stopped coming to me because I appeared to be too busy, right? There's a hole there. Remember that endurance leadership addresses the issues you feel, but may not be able to see. What required endurance leadership here in this situation was moving through feelings of uncertainty, vulnerability, doubt, concern, and confusion, everything that I have felt and I was feeling, right? So I fixed it. I fixed it by being accountable and demonstrating integrity. I owned the fact that I wasn't as present as I needed to be. It's the hardest thing ever to be a confident leader, to know where you stand, and then to walk back in not knowing. A lot of people, I think, would default to their authority. Well, I'm the manager. You have to listen to me. And me, I did a lot of groveling like, whoa, I'm sorry. I wasn't here for you. Like, let me let me weasel my way back in. Let me get to know where we're at. Because guess what? I've changed and you've changed too. We work together as a team. It's cooperative, it's collaborative, and I love that word. It means co-labor, work together. And we had to work together to get to know each other. But that's a hard shift to make, right? Where do we balance being a player on one team and a leader on another? Another thing that required a lot of self-awareness, because endurance leaders learn to leverage and earn influence on a daily basis. They don't count on yesterday's wins to carry over to today's wins or losses. Every day is a new day. This is actually the second crisis that I've led this team through. The first was an unexpected and complicated passing of a team member last year. I remember going through that, and I'm a very strong, optimistic individual. And I remember really opening up and being honest about how I was feeling and sharing. And as a leader, we don't always have to be the most strong. Sometimes we have to be the ones that support it being okay to be the least strong, right? Where is that environment? Where are we showing up and making people feel like it's okay to not be okay? So leadership was cloudy, and it was robotically strong. And I love this shift here, right? Now it's transparent, it's vulnerable, but friends, it's human. It is human now, and we are bringing a human element. It's needed. Perfect. Well, I love being able to talk about this again, so not even a problem. Endurance leaders work outside the box. They lead based on what we could be, not what we actually know, right? Because what we already know already exists, and we don't get to progress if we always stay inside of the box. Capability, by definition, is inherently optimistic. It only refers to ability that doesn't actually exist yet. It's a thought triggered by courage and experience, but it doesn't actually become ability until we practice, right? We have to practice it to consistent demonstration. Since we can only frame what we know, can we actually have foresight that we can't do something until we try? That puts limits on the limitless. It's not really up to you to decide because, well, you haven't really tried yet. My daughter knew that she could ride a bike with training wheels. And when she said, I can't, and refused for a very long period of time to not ride a bike without training wheels. And y'all, she is 7. Like this, well, that's 8 now. This was this summer, this baby learned to ride a bike without training wheels, which was for me, I'm a mountain bike. I'm a cyclist. I needed that baby to ride the bike without training wheels. When she kept refusing and said, I can't do it, but she hadn't actually tried. What she meant to say was, I don't know if I trust myself. If my goal is to be a training director, which at one point it was, I'm done, right? I'm here. I'm now the department head. Any promotion that I get from here on out is seriously just a gold star. If the president of my company came to me and said, Jessica, we're going to make you vice president of training, it would literally not change one thing that I do. It would be a gold star, and I would be flattered. But does that mean I'm done? Right? What I meant when I wanted to be a training director is I wanted the skills, knowledge, and ability to be one, which I could attain with or without ever getting the title. Endurance leaders set development milestones versus traditional goals, which help them and others around them focus inward on knowledge, skill, and ability. And you can't take that away once you have it. And it's also not dependent on another individual to give it to you. If I went and got all the skills, knowledge, and ability that I needed, and then was sitting here waiting for someone to make me training director, do you know how unsuccessful I could feel? Like my goal is dependent on somebody else creating a title for me. I don't want to wait around. I'm way too impatient for that. On the flip side, sometimes we set our goals and we set our successes dependent on those things. So if I lost my job or my home or my car, things that are products of my success, yeah, I'd be upset. That would hurt my feelings. I'd probably be devastated, but I would still have the character, drive, and perseverance that it took to get those in the first place. And I would just go get them again. Endurance leadership is limitless, it's relentless, and it's driven by a why and accountable to the how. And here we have our limitless slide, which I just love. And I really encourage you to think about maybe where you have put limits on your life, right? What have you said, oh, I can't do that? Well, why not? That is the beauty about where we're at right now. You can go get it. Nobody says you can't learn A, B, or C. Nobody says that you can't go learn how to be a this or how to be a that. And that is how we grow, even if there might not outwardly be anywhere to go. When we shift our definitions of goals to development milestones, when we shift our successes to things that aren't dependent on other people or things, we are able to grow within our own selves, within our own positions, right? Maybe I'm a maintenance supervisor and I know maybe I'll never be a regional maintenance supervisor. Maybe for me, that's the top. But I want to learn how to work in a different type of property. I want to learn how to work with different types of people. Nobody puts limitations on that but you, right? A lot of that's self-inflicted. So I encourage you to be limitless, to take those caps off and think about where you were, who you are, and what that's going to look like. And I want to wrap this up by sharing my definition of success with you because this is very, very important to me. And I encourage you to think about your own definition of success. So as we look here, I want to be able to show this quote because I just love it. So it's to laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the effects of children, to learn the appreciation of honest critics and endure I can't even talk anymore, betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the beauty in others, to leave the world a better place by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a recommended social condition, to know that one life has been better because I was here, right? That to me, that is success. And it's not tied to anything. And it's not dependent on anybody else. It's how I choose to view the world, right? So to sum up and put a nice little bow on everything that we just talked about in the last 41 minutes, and things that I would love to hear from the Q&A, where have you maybe been or put limits on yourself? What confessions do you want to share? Think about how we even introduce ourselves, right? And we think about endurance leadership, how it typically was. Sometimes how we were as a leader, who we were as a leader, was really defined by our resume. So how would you have met me at Apartment Connect? Would you have come up and said, hi, I'm so-and-so, community director or regional manager. I work for this company. Maybe I would have said, hi, I'm Jessica. I'm director of training at FPI and I'm speaking today. That's not who I am. That's what I do. And there's a difference because now in an endurance leadership setting, it is about who you are and less about what you do. So if I were to introduce myself now, and if you're brave enough to throw that in the Q&A, tell me who you are. Let's get to know each other because knowing you means knowing who you are as a leader. So how about I go first? Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm a very impatient mom of two. I like long walks on the beach and a nice glass of red. I have ADHD and it plays a really big part of my life in my role. And I was nervous to be this vulnerable and open with you guys today. And I hope that you got it. And I hope that it's impactful and you can share it with somebody that you know. And I am grateful that it's sunny outside and that's a little bit about me. So maybe that's a nice way to kick us off. Would love to hear questions.
So we have a few things coming in the chat and in the Q&A. Someone says they resonated with, I create my own stress. You nailed it. Thanks for that. Paul Morello says, I think a limit is by using the word just. Oh, I'm just a trainer. I'm just a manager. To quote Johnny Depp in Finding Neverland, just is a horrible candle snuffing word.
Yeah, I love it. I actually read an article from, I think she might have been like the CEO of Google, that sometimes we do use just as almost a way to apologize in advance for what we're about to say. Like, oh, I just wanted to add, like, get rid of it, right? Like, I want to add, be assertive, be confident in what you have to add, right? So I love that. Oh, okay, you learned to read just yesterday. Perfect.
Yeah, Laurel brought that up yesterday in our communication session. That was great.
Have a confession they want to share. Like, does anyone resonate with maybe being too tired to be a parent or too tired to be a partner? Sometimes it feels good just to say it.
Guilty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a couple of folks raise their hand. Joshua, too tired for the second work shift of mom, says Felicia. Kelly says all of it.
Yeah, it is, because here in this environment, right, it doesn't go away. Leadership doesn't go away. It just transitions. And that's something that I really learned, and the skill I learned to develop is how to transition well. I felt like I was really good at work. I'm really good at this environment, but then transitioning into mom and lunch and soccer and gymnastics and all of these things, like almost thinking about where I had to give more energy was overwhelming. So I just wouldn't do it. Just almost wouldn't want to do it. So I learned to, like, self-care, right? When you're an endurance athlete or an endurance leader, there are things that you do along the way to take care of yourself. You don't just go run 26 miles, right? You don't just go out and do it. Like, you rehydrate, you take stops, you mentally prepare. There's lots of things that you do along the way. So really, like, that self-care and balance is, what do I need to do to stick this marathon in, because it's not going away. But we just really hope that it's going to, because we liked how it was. And now we want it back, but it's not. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jessica. This was really an impactful session. I found myself almost in tears a few moments, guilty, and we really appreciate you sharing your personal experience and your leadership experience. And thank you all to our attendees for joining us today. We have another session coming up at 11 with Gene Heyer, Building Your Bench. So investing in developing your team. So thank you all again for being here. Thanks to Jessica. We love having you.
Thank you.
See you all in the next session.